Hi there, my name is Olivia, and over the last 12 months or so, I've had the opportunity and privilege of working under Dr. Katie Moyse and through the McPherson Institute for Teaching and Learning to work on this really exciting pedagogical project. We evaluated the impact of visual course outlines here at McMaster University. Just to give you a little background, course outlines play a key role in setting student expectations and supporting student success. They should act as quick and helpful guides for students to reference throughout the semester and to also reduce the number of questions students may have for their instructors about the course. While they should act as these intermediary communication liaisons, they don't always, and there are a few fundamental issues with the current state of course outlines at Mac. And these issues can actually be summarized into three main pain points. So course outlines are often text heavy. Some of them span 10 or more pages. Some of them contain more than half of boilerplate language. Course outlines can sometimes be confusing. Some of them contain jargon, run-on sentences, redundancies, and course outlines can sometimes even be punitive. If you do not meet this expectation, you will fail or receive a grade of 0. And the problem here is that students often miss important information. But with every pain point opens up a brand new opportunity for improvement. So if we actually flip these pain points upside down, we have the opportunity to make them visual, concise, and friendly. And we actually can make this happen by integrating UI/UX design principles. So UI is the user interface. It refers to what we see on a screen or a page. And UX is user experience, and that describes how we interact with the system. And so I created two new visual outlines for LifeSci 2 AA3 and LifeSci 3 PO3. I was able to take all of the pertinent information from these 10-page course outlines full of text and turn them into a one-page infographic-like document. I added visual aids like icons, colors, illustrations, and donut charts to visualize things. But now we want to test whether they're effective. Do they work? So how do we test this? So we went into InDesign and created the two visual course outlines. We then went into Lime Survey to create a single blind randomized control trial survey to test the effectiveness of these new visual course outlines compared to the standard one. We then went into GraphPad and compared metrics like speed, comprehension, likeliness of referring back to that line, and ratings on visual appeal, and ran that through a statistical analysis, and any questions that required students to type into an open box were then ran through NVivo through a thematic analysis, and there we could find common themes in the comments about visual appeal. So the survey can actually be broken down into two main parts. Part one, we've got any course outline. Here the participants were given an arbitrary standard course outline at McMaster, and they were asked how likely they were to refer back to that document, which components they were looking for, how fast it was to locate that component, how easy was that component to understand, how quickly was that component to understand, and whether the outline in its entirety was visually appealing or not. Anything denoted in the circle means that we used that many points of a Likert scale, multiple choice is MC, and anything in AA means that they were able to justify their answers using text. So then we've got part two. This is where we get into the randomized control trial, and specifically with the course outlines from 2 AA3 and 3 PO3. So the questions in part two are the exact same as question one, but it's with the RCT. So anything that had to do with Likert scales, we took all of that data and put it into GraphPad for statistical analysis, and any text answers, we ran that through NVivo for a thematic analysis. And now into the results. For part one, any course outline, we got a lot of results, but graph A and B are the only ones that you need to really know. So graph A represents how likely the participants were to refer back to any course outline. The majority of participants were very likely. And in graph B, they were actually usually checking for the evaluation scheme and the assignment description. So the results from part 2 is where we get into the randomized control trial. This graph represents how likely participants were to refer back to the course outlines assigned. So the control group in turquoise received the standard outlines for either 2A3 or 3PO3, and the intervention group in red either received the visual course outlines for those two courses. So we see a slightly statistically significant difference between likeliness of referring back between these two groups. So the intervention group that received the visual outline were more likely to refer back to it than that of the control group that received the standard outline. So here we get into the metrics: time to locate, comprehension level, and time to comprehend. So these three graphs here represent the evaluation scheme component. And across all three metrics, we see statistically significant differences between the control and intervention group. The intervention group that received the visual outline were able to locate the evaluation scheme quicker, they were able to understand it at a deeper level, and they were quicker in understanding it. And here we actually see the exact same trend for these metrics for the other course outline components: assignment description, course description, learning objectives, instructor and or TA contact information, and lecture time slots. So the intervention group that received the visual outline were quicker in locating these components, had a deeper understanding of these components, and were able to understand these components more quickly. Here we get into the part where the participants were prompted to rate whether the course outline that they received was visually appealing or not. Here in the control group that received the standard outline, 60% of participants said that it was visually appealing, whereas 40% did not. Shifting over to the intervention group that received the visual outline, 97% said that it was visually appealing, whereas 3% said that it was not. Graph P just shows more of the statistical graph of these results. We have statistically significant differences. So the intervention group that received the visual outline said that it was more visually appealing than the standard. So here we get into the common justifications as to whether the course outline they received was visually appealing or not. So we found major themes like visual appeal, conciseness, organization format, usability or approachability, navigation, and cohesion between documents. And then as kind of like sub-themes or codes, I separated into whether these themes were talked in a negative light, so on the left, or in a positive light on the right. So here in the control group that received the standard outline, there's a pretty even split between negative and positive sentiments for these themes. Then when we move over to the intervention group that received the visual outline, there's a shift to the right towards more of a positive sentiment for these key themes. So it's evident that visual course outlines allow for a quicker knowledge synthesis, a deeper understanding, and more positive perceptions of course material. As for future directions, anyone picking up this project, I recommend to use eye tracking experiments to more rigorously measure speed and questionnaires to measure comprehension. And the final message I just want to leave with you is that visual course outlines work, and other faculties at McMaster University and other universities should adopt visual course outlines to further support student learning.